So our next guest has a unique perspective on all this. Rebekkah Nyack is a Canadian living in Tokyo. She's currently studying international affairs at Temple University in Japan, and we reached her this morning in Tokyo. Good morning, Rebekkah.
Good morning, Arthi.
So already we're just reporting that today the IOC president made assurances that the games would be safe for all. How do you respond to that message?
Well, I don't know. It's even though, yes, there's no spectators now, and I think that is a big move in making things safer, there's still all the staff that are working the Olympics, all the athletes coming in from all over the world. And already there's been athletes that have COVID-19 upon arrival after a few days in Japan. So it's a little scary because if one person has it, it can travel quite fast, as we all know.
You know, it's interesting you talk about the athletes because there are some who are deciding not to go. For example, we just heard yesterday from Canadian tennis star Bianca Andreescu that she was the latest to announce that she's skipping the games because of pandemic challenges, she said. So do you think that athletes like that should be on board to go, or are they making the right decision to sort of decide that it's not in their best interest at this time?
I think it's really smart to decide to not go. If you don't feel safe, I think you shouldn't go. And it's such a high risk of getting sick and then not being able to compete in your own sport for the rest of your life.
Do you think, given the fact that there are a number of athletes who are deciding not to go, and we've talked about spectators not being around or allowed to be at the venues as well, should the Olympics in this current unusual state go on?
Honestly, I don't think that it should. Will it probably still happen? Yes, the Japanese government is still very for the Olympics. They want the revenue, they want the publicity for its success and everything. But I think it's very, very dangerous still. And especially the Japanese vaccine rollout has been really slow. It's around 10% or something like that. And the population of Tokyo, the greater Tokyo area, is about 36 million people. So the same amount as all of Canada. So it honestly should not be held because it's not the best option.
You know, you've got a unique perspective, too, because you are living in Tokyo right now. So what is the mood like there? What are people saying to you about it? What are your conversations like surrounding the games?
So a lot of my international friends, we all sort of agree that the game shouldn't happen. It's very risky. And also because we're going to be living here after the Olympics. So if there's a new strand of COVID happening, we're going to be the ones who have to deal with it. We're going to have to be the first ones to deal with the aftermath of the Tokyo Olympics. And on the other hand, a lot of my Japanese friends, they just don't want to talk about it. They're really reserved about it. If I bring up the Olympics, they just ask to not talk about it because they don't want to make their own country maybe look bad, or they don't want to create an opinion about it because it is very controversial.
You know, it's interesting because right now you are under the state of emergency living there, and we know that the state of emergency will in fact cover the entire duration of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. So what is it like right now in the city when there is this state of emergency order in place? Is everything closed? Is a lot still going on? How is the city operating under this restriction and rule?
So the state of emergency isn't really a state of emergency compared to Canada when everyone went into lockdown. So the only restrictions in place is restaurants close a little earlier, and there's no serving of alcohol. But other than that, everything is running as usual. So during rush hour, trains are still really crowded. People are still out on the streets, going shopping, going to restaurants, eating. It's like there's not even a state of emergency happening. And very, very different.
Well, it is a very unique perspective that you are getting to share with us here. And finally, I wanted to ask you, before all of this happened and you were in Tokyo or heading to Tokyo and knew you would be there for the Olympics, What did you think it would be like, and how much has that perception of it all changed? So, and how does that make you feel?
Yeah, so I knew the Olympics were going to happen, and I knew Tokyo was going to get very, very busy because of a bunch of people coming and seeing the Olympics. But it once the pandemic hit and the Olympics started to get postponed and then postponed for a year, there was a lot of feeling like, oh, it's going to get canceled. And now that we're 10 days out and it's still going to happen, it's really, really scary because I don't want the worst outcome to happen after the Olympics. I don't want a new strand of COVID-19 to emerge. I don't want any of that. And Tokyo is just does not have the resources to handle a large outbreak if there is one. So it's very scary.
Well, Rebekkah, we appreciate you sharing your perspective with us and our viewers. Please do stay safe out there. That was Rebekkah Nyack, and she is a Canadian living in Japan, and she joined us from Tokyo.